On today's Locked On SEC, the conference goes 13-3 on opening weekend. We'll dissect the good and the bad. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. Today's episode is presented by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Go to 5hourenergy.com. It's the number 5, and use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order, valid until September 30th. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. I'm Chris Gordy. Welcome into Locked On SEC. We're coming to you from Las Vegas as we just watched LSU have a tough go again in their opening game. We got week 1 reaction, plenty of good to discuss, but we got to start with the bad. And let's start with the bad first. It is Brian Kelly and LSU losing to USC 27-20, and LSU and Brian Kelly now 0-3 in neutral site season openers since he has been there in Baton Rouge. LSU has now not won a season opening game since the Joe Burrow year back in 2019. They have lost to Mississippi State in an opener under Ed Orgeron, to UCLA in an opener under Ed Orgeron, and to Florida State, and USC now for Brian Kelly. And oh, by the way, LSU opens at Clemson next year. They got a home and home starting with them. Hey, Brian Kelly and LSU, maybe start scheduling Southeastern. Maybe start scheduling, I don't know, Nevada or somebody you can beat. Scheduling the big dogs, it ain't working. It ain't happening. And despite LSU playing a competitive and tough game, there was some good. I mean, LSU was up 17-13 with 7 minutes left in this game. They had the ball. They didn't do anything offensively. They gave it away, and they lose this game. A couple takeaways from me. New offensive coordinator Joe Sloan, some questionable play calls, predictable at times. Couldn't run the ball consistently. John Emery had a couple nice runs, one big one, but mostly it was just lack of consistently running between the tackles. LSU has got one of the best offensive lines in the country, if not the best. Pass protection, they were awesome protecting Garrett Nussmeier all night, giving him time to throw, but opening up running lanes, it wasn't happening. It wasn't there, and yet they tried to keep running the ball, and I thought at times too conservative. They threw for 200 yards in the first half, and in the second half, they're like, let's run the ball. Third and short, let's run the ball. And it was like, dude, it ain't happening. And a couple of 3-and-outs, and they kept giving the ball back to USC. Now, USC couldn't do a whole lot with it either, but they made the plays when they need them, particularly in those last couple minutes. And, again, LSU, disappointing loss to the season, disappointing start. As for LSU's defensive coordinator, Blake Baker, improved. The defense was improved, but still not what we're used to when it comes to LSU. I mean, we're used to the old, DBs flying all over the field and all that. And, again, improved because they got stops. I mean, let's be honest. Last year under Matt House, LSU's defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. I mean, they were terrible. So they were able to at least get stops this go-around, but still not enough. Couldn't get the big plays when they needed them. And just a couple numbers for you. LSU 5 for 13 on third downs, 1 for 2 on fourth down. Of course, Garrett Nussmeier with the interception there in the final seconds. I thought Nussmeier overall played very well. But bottom line, at the end of the day, you score 20 points. 20 points ain't going to get it done, particularly against a good team like USC. Ain't going to get it done in games when you get into Southeastern Conference play. When you're playing SEC games, I mean, to compete with the Ole Misses and the Alabamas and teams like that, you got to score 30-plus, sometimes into the 40s. And LSU knows that. I think they'll make the adjustments. But, man, oh, man, not a good start for LSU. And Brian Kelly and LSU start 0-1 again. Familiar territory. 2 years ago, they were able to rally, won the SEC West, got to Atlanta. Keep in mind, the SEC now no longer Western or Eastern divisions. It's just wide open. The two best teams go to Atlanta. I mean, LSU they still got all their conference games ahead of them, but, man, it is going to be tough to, no room for error, no margin for error, I should say, the rest of the way. One more note on this game. How about former Mississippi State running back Woody Marks for USC? Thought he performed admirably. Great job by Woody Marks. It was good to see him. I mean, I had a buddy, Mississippi State buddy, text me. He goes, where was that at USC? I mean, he had some nice games, or at Mississippi State rather. He had some nice games for the Bulldogs there, but man, Sunday night he had some really nice runs for USC and the go-ahead touchdown there late. All right, our next loser of the weekend we got to discuss. How about the Florida Gators losing to Miami 41-17 in the swamp? Time is running out for Billy Napier and crew, and God, that was ugly. Graham Mertz, 11 for 20, 91 yards passing, an interception. He was sacked 3 times, left the game with a concussion. And, man, I mean, the offense was ugly. Montreal Johnson, actually, he had some nice moments. 11 carries for 106 yards. Looks great in the box score, but 71 of that came on one play. How about the Florida defense? I mean, they gave up 385 yards to Cam Ward. We knew Cam Ward was going to be, bring some bright spots to Miami. And, look, Miami looks to be pretty damn good, but Florida has no business losing to Miami by that kind of score. Trey Wilson, wide receiver, 7 catches, 50 yards. It was one of those things that were just trying to get the ball in his hands, but you got to stretch the field, man. You got to go down the field. Everything can't be just, at the line of scrimmage or short passes. Tyreek Sapp did have a sack in this one defensively, but Miami 529 total yards and just not a good start for Florida. I mean, I kept saying this all offseason. I was saying this is one of the biggest games for Billy Napier because if he can win this one, it buys you margin of error down the road. We saw Florida State in week 1. They didn't look great. Maybe that's a winnable game down the stretch if Florida starts performing well. But, man, right out of the gates, ugly loss for Florida. It's not what you want to do. Now, coming up next, they get Samford this week before Texas A&M pays them a visit. So they got to get a lot of stuff figured out. We'll see where Graham Mertz is in the concussion protocol. DJ Lagway, it was a mixed bag when he got in, some good, some bad. But Florida, man, I mean, Billy Napier right now appears to be dead man walking. They're going to have to get that figured out really quick or he will not make it to midseason there in the swamp. Our other big loser of the weekend, how about Texas A&M? They lose to Notre Dame in College Station 23-13. Dogfight of a game defensively. I mean, I hate to talk bad about A&M. I thought the defense played a heck of a game, did everything they could to slow down Notre Dame's offense, but not enough offense for the Aggies in this one. Connor Wegman, 12 of 30 passing, 100 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. This is a guy that everybody was talking up as, possibly a first-round pick next year. And, this guy, keep an eye on Connor Wegman. Hey, he's healthy now. Look out for him. Look, I think Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame defense did a fantastic job in game planning and limiting what he could do. But, man, Connor Wegman got to play better than that when you get into SEC play. Or, he'll find himself on the bench and then maybe go to another guy. I think he will get better. Running back Le'Veon Moss, 20 carries, just 70 yards, did score a touchdown. But, again, that Notre Dame defense, stout up front. For A&M, stout as well. I mean, defense solid. 7 tackles for a loss. They were living in the backfield. Big Nick Scorton. Love that addition this offseason for A&M coming over from Purdue. He was living in the backfield. Shamar Turner as well. I like what A&M's got defensively. They got to figure it out offensively. Notre Dame had 356 total yards of offense. A&M just 246. Mike Elko, I know you're a defensive-minded coach. You got to find the offense, bro. Losing Bobby Petrino kind of sucks. And Colin Klein, not a good debut as the new A&M OC. A&M goes 4 for 13 on 3rd downs, 0 for 2 on 4th downs. Next up for the Aggies, it is McNeese State. Then it is a road trip to Florida. And again, that's a big one for both sides, for A&M and Florida, coming up here in a couple of weeks. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And coming up next, we are going to touch on some of the good. Who impressed us over the weekend? There was a lot of good to talk about. I get it. It was Cupcake City for a lot of teams across the conference, but we're going to talk about some of the people who impressed us coming up next. Quick minute here for our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Look, you want to grab a 5 Hour Energy shot to stay alert, to watch all your favorite football games, or look, if you got to stay up late watching an intense overtime game, you want to take a 5 Hour Energy shot in the morning so you can start your day, get off to work, do what you got to do and stay alert. But 5 Hour Energy is the brand that hardworking people have been trusting for over 20 years. You know where to find them. They're right there at the cash register at every nearby convenience store, grocery store, whatever it is. you know where to find 5 Hour Energy, but you could also find them on their website. Go to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5, hourenergy.com, and use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. You'll get 20% off your order. That coupon code is only valid until September 30th. Can't use it on any other offers or subscriptions, but go to 5 Hour Energy. That's 5hourenergy.com today. Use that promo code LOCKEDONCFB and get started getting that boost that you need. I rode along here, Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And Chris Gordy here from Las Vegas, the site of the final SEC game of Week 1 as LSU falls to USC. But it wasn't all bad like LSU. There was a lot of good to discuss. And how about this? Half of the SEC teams that played this week, 8, so we got 16 teams now, 8 SEC teams scored 50 or more points and allowed 0 touchdowns in their season opener. I'll say that again. Half, 8 SEC teams scored 50 or more points and allowed 0 touchdowns. Now, look, we'll talk about the opponents they played. It was a lot of crappy opponents out there. But let's start with Georgia, because that's the number 1 team in the country, and there was a lot of good from Georgia. Georgia pulled away from Clemson in this one, 34-3. It was close for a while, and it felt like, man, Clemson's hanging around. What are you doing, Georgia? If you keep letting them hanging around, maybe they'll have a chance. No, nada. Georgia imposing their will. Carson Beck ends up throwing for 278 yards, 2 touchdowns. We did find out before the game, Trevor Etienne was going to sit out the game with the 1-game suspension from the DUI earlier this offseason. And we know Georgia's been banged up at running backs, so we're wondering, who are we going to see? Well, how about young true freshman Nate Frazier coming in, 11 carries, 83 yards, and a touchdown. That was good to see. How about my guy London Humphreys, kind of the unsung hero. He hasn't got a lot of hype or attention. The dynamic freshman from a year ago at Vanderbilt transfers this offseason in the portal to Georgia. And look, Georgia's got a lot of weapons still. Everybody talking about them losing Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, but I mean, from Oscar Delp on down, Dylan Bell, they got weapons everywhere. But it was London Humphreys having 63 yards and a touchdown, making a big play for Georgia. Defensively, Georgia's still stout as ever. They're still the big dog. Jalen Walker with 1.5 sacks. Malachi Starks with a big, athletic interception. That's what he does. He goes up in the air and he pulls down a ball from the sky. And big win there for Georgia. Clemson, Dabo, not doing the transfer portal. It seems like he's going to pay for that. But, hey, good win for Georgia. They move on. Next up, they get Tennessee Tech. So Georgia gets to kind of, put it on autopilot this next week and get everybody healthy. And, again, really entertaining game to watch Georgia do what they do and prove why they're the number 1 team in the country. Still a lot of things to clean up. I know Kirby talked about it after the game, but impressive win for the Georgia Bulldogs. Who else impressed? How about the Texas Longhorns rolling Colorado State 52-0? Quinn Ewers throws for 260 yards, 3 touchdowns. They rushed for 190 as a team. They're going to have to figure that out. Jaden Blue wasn't very consistent running the football. I don't know. I mean, they were fine. They can get by. I know Texas, when they're at their best, they want to be a little bit more 50-50, dominant run game and dominant pass game. But, look, the passing game was there. Quinn Ewers was awesome. How about Ryan Wingo, the freshman, 70 yards receiving for him. Nice debut for him. And then Arch Manning throwing his first career touchdown pass as a quarterback in college football. That was good to see as well. So, look, Texas takes care of business. I didn't think they win by that much. I mean, that was a dominant effort on both sides to shut out an opponent like Colorado State. I know they're not a world beater, but remember, they gave Colorado a game just a year ago, but to shut them out, pretty impressive. And now, Texas, you got game day. You're going on the road, up at Michigan, up to the Big House. College Game Day announced they're coming there this weekend, and very interesting Michigan team. I watched a little bit of their game over the weekend. Didn't look impressive. We know all the pieces that they lost, but still a tough place to play. And talking with my guy who's a Michigan guy, he said the one strength they have is the secondary. They like their corners a lot. So if they can cover these Texas receivers, maybe it'll be a close game. But Texas is going in there with a big win on their mind. We'll see what Texas does when they head up to Michigan this weekend. But nice, impressive win, week 1 over Colorado State. Who else impressed this week? How about Alabama? Man, they have been the talk of the town for the last 48 hours or so. Bama crushes Western Kentucky 63-0. Now, look, I get it. It's Western Kentucky. But it was TJ Finley, their quarterback, who's former SEC quarterback at LSU and Auburn. And Bama absolutely just got after him. And then offensively for Bama, the Kalen DeBoer effect, Nick Sheridan, take a bow. I mean, they did everything they needed to do. Jalen Milroe, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air. People are already talking about Heisman buzz. We already know Jalen Milroe was a Heisman preseason favorite. You know, passed the test with flying colors week 1, looked great. Bama rushed for over 300 yards on the ground as a team, so that was good to see. But how about through the air? It was true freshman wide receiver Ryan Williams, 2 catches, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And that Milroe to Ryan Williams combination is already something to behold and something to watch. And we get into SEC play. I mean, this is going to be something that's, you know, teams are going to have to worry about. This kid is athletic and fast and just a freak, and is going to be a problem in the SEC. But defensively for Bama, Keon Sabb, the Michigan transfer, a DB, not 1 but 2 interceptions, very athletic, making some big plays. And Kalen DeBoer, take a bow, my friend. Very nice, impressive debut, following in the footsteps of Nick Saban. We talked about this day for years. Who's going to follow in the footsteps of Nick Saban? My God, it's going to be so hard. I get it. It's Western Kentucky. But let's be real. If that game had been 14-3 at halftime, we'd all be scratching our head going, Kalen DeBoer, don't know if he's cut out for this. Impressive debut for him at Alabama. Next up, they will host USF, and then it's on the road at Wisconsin. Now, USF, remember, that was the freaky game last year in the rain where Saban benched Milroe, and they were going to the backup quarterbacks, and they all stunk. That game was close all the way to the 4th quarter. So don't think it'll be that same thing, especially in T-Town this time around, but again, a nice little tune-up game, again, for Alabama to get their feet under them before they got to go on the road to Wisconsin. And again, Wisconsin not very impressive in their week 1, but still a tough place to play. And so Bama is going to need to get ready, you know, for that tough road environment. And they'll have one more tune-up here against USF. A couple more impressive teams from this weekend. How about the Ole Miss Rebels? They defeat Ferman 76-0. Jackson Dart, 418 yards through the air, 5 touchdowns. Go ahead and slide his name in the Heisman competition if you didn't already have it. Jackson Dart, awesome, you know, week 1 performance from him. Wide receiver Trey Harris, 8 catches, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns. Already one of the leaders in the SEC, receiving leaders. So I'm sure he's going to be in that top 5 group all year long when we get, you know, into the conference play. 4 sacks defensively for Pete Golding's unit over at Ole Miss. And look, it's Ferman. I don't know if you can take a ton away from this. Ferman stinks. Ole Miss is awesome. So you turn the page and you move on. But next up for Ole Miss, look, they're going to keep rolling with wins. It's Middle Tennessee State up next, and then they're at Wake Forest. So that's going to be their toughest non-con game coming here in a couple weeks. Kind of funny watching LSU keeps playing these, you know, Florida States and UCLA and USC. It's like, follow the Lane Kiffin model. Go play at Wake Forest. Look at what Michigan did last year. They played ECU and Bowling Green, and they got to the national championship and won it all. So don't need a tough non-conference slate. How about Tennessee? They rolled UT Chattanooga 69-3. Nice home debut for Nico Iamaleava there at Neyland Stadium. 314 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns. Just everything that you wanted, Tennessee offensively. Josh Heupel's crew, they did it, right? I mean, Dylan Sampson, 124 yards rushing on the ground, 3 rushing touchdowns. He's awesome. Knew he was going to be awesome. He's going to be one of the best running backs in the SEC this year. Wide receivers, Dante Thornton, over 105 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air. Brew McCoy, Chris Brazzell looked good at wide receiver. Over 700 yards of offense for Tennessee. I get it. It's Chattanooga. But next up, real good test. They get to go play NC State in Charlotte. This is going to be a really, really good test to see where this Tennessee team is. Looked solid defensively. We heard that they were going to be improved defensively, but got to see it against a really, a real opponent, and they're going to get that this week against NC State. Our last really big impress of the weekend, how about Vanderbilt? Shout out to Vanderbilt. I wanted to lead the show with Vanderbilt because they impressed the hell out of me watching here in Vegas. They beat Virginia Tech 34-27 in overtime. And Diego Pavia, man, all the issues that Vanderbilt's had with quarterbacks the last couple of years, Ken Seals, A.J. Swan, I mean, can't find that consistent guy to get it done. Diego Pavia comes in with Jerry Kill and Tim Beck from New Mexico, and they get it done. Awesome to see. Couldn't be more happy for them. Diego Pavia, 190 passing yards, 104 rushing yards, 3 total touchdowns for him. And the Vandy defense improved. I thought, look, they weren't world beaters, but we heard this offseason, we heard a couple weeks ago, Clark Lee was going to take over defensive play calling duties. And he was pretty damn good and effective in calling the defense. So expect more of that. Take about Clark Lee. It's a hell of a week 1 win. Nobody was giving Vandy a shot. Virginia Tech, all I kept hearing about is, oh, they bring back all these returning starters. This is a really good Virginia Tech team. Vandy said, bleep that. We're going to take care of business in Nashville, even though their stadium is still under construction with cranes and stuff in the end zone. But, look, they led 17-3 at halftime. Tech took a 27-20 lead. This would have been a normal year. Vandy folds up shop and they, tuck their tail and they lose that game. They come back, force overtime, and then win it in overtime. So great win there for Vanderbilt. And how about this? Next up, they get Alcorn State. Then they're at Georgia Southern. Not saying it'll be easy, but dare I say Vanderbilt could start the season 3-0 before they go to Mizzou. Certainly would be awesome for Clark Lee and Vanderbilt fans, something to cheer for, right? And then maybe for the rest of the SEC, maybe you don't take Vandy so lightly. Like maybe you look at it and go, Vandy is one we gotta, we can't just pencil in the W. I mean, maybe you pencil in the W, but at least you're gonna get maybe a little bit more of a dogfight than in recent years. All right, more to come here on Locked On SEC. We still got the rest of the conference we haven't touched on yet. Just give a quick thought on each of those teams as we continue on. More Locked On SEC after this. First, a quick minute here for our friends at the Ultimate College Football GM app, or game, if you will. It's an amazing game and a simulation where you get to be the head coach. Ultimate College Football GM. You recruit players, you oversee camps, you hand out scholarships. All of it is in the game. You are responsible for offensive plays throughout this game. Ultimate College Football GM, completely free, no ads, 100% playable offline, so you don't have to be online. You can play offline if you like. Use our promo code, LOCKEDONCFB, in the game store. That's going to give you a boost for your program. So after you get set up, you're the GM, you got your team that you pick, you're recruiting players, all this, go to the game store, put in that code, LOCKEDONCFB. That's going to give you your boost to your program. And if you need to find, you can't find it in the App Store or whatever, this is what you do. Go to the website, ultimate-cfb.com, and get started on your coaching legacy today. It's Ultimate College Football GM. All right, final segment here of Locked On SEC, and we're talking about a interesting week 1 across the conference and very impressive performances by some teams and some players, and got to give some more love. How about the Auburn Tigers? My goodness, Auburn has an offense. That's what everybody is saying, looking around the country. Auburn rolls Alabama A&M 73-3. I get it. It's Alabama A&M. But how about Peyton Thorne? That was the game he needed to give Auburn fans some confidence in him that he's going to be that guy and he's going to be much better this year. 322 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air. And how about the freshmen, man? All the freshmen for Auburn, these wide receivers that we heard all about all offseason, they came to play and they were incredible. Cam Coleman, 62 yards and a touchdown. Perry Thompson, 82 yards and a touchdown. Malcolm Simmons, 91 yards and a touchdown. Keandre Lambert Smith looked good. I mean, I got to be honest, Auburn looked good. I said that was their ultimate test for this week, that they had to pass. They had to play their role, do what they needed to do, look good on offense, and Hugh Freeze running that offense, it looked great. So, again, can't put too much into it because it's Alabama and A&M, but the good news is you get a better opponent this week. Next up, you host Cal. You know that Auburn's going to be rocking for that one. They're going to want to go show out and see if this offense can do it against a better opponent than the last week's opponent, but I'm excited to see it, man. Auburn fans, you deserve this. You heard all the crap about Peyton Thorne all offseason, getting this guy get better. He got better, at least in week 1. We'll see if he can sustain the whole season, but feel good, Auburn fans, that you got something to cheer about, and that was certainly impressive. Look, if it was so easy to beat a team 73-3, then why don't you do it every week, right? So tip your cap to Hugh Freeze and company in Auburn. That was a nice win. Kentucky, they beat Southern Miss 31-0. It was a game that was shortened by rain. They had a long rain delay before they even started, and then they got into the game, and then another rain delay, and they finally decided, let's just call it. Everybody go home. We did what we needed to do. But Brock Vandegrift in his Kentucky debut, 169 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Barian Brown had 2 receiving touchdowns. How about the defense for Kentucky? 2 interceptions, Jamin Dewins-Johnson and J.Q. Hardaway. Nice to see that from those guys. Next up for Kentucky, hosting South Carolina. This is a big one. They've been advertising this. This one was picked up by ABC. We know that this one is a big one. Early, week 2 SEC action already. A big one for South Carolina, a big one for Kentucky. So Mark Stoops and company, congrats on them starting 1-0 against Southern Miss. How about Mississippi State, the team that nobody's really talking about? They quietly go out and beat Eastern Kentucky 56-7. I get it, it's Eastern Kentucky, but Blake Shapen, 247 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, had a rushing touchdown too. Jordan Mosley had 104 yards and a touchdown through the air. I'm still not sure what Mississippi State is yet, but very good debut for Jeff Lebby and company, and they will head to Arizona State this coming week. That's going to be a tough one, tough road environment out there on the West Coast, but kudos to Jeff Lebby. That's how you start, Mississippi State. Start off 1-0, see how many more wins they can get as the season rolls along. Some other games we didn't get to touch on, but Friday night, Oklahoma beat Temple 51-3. Jackson Arnold looked really good. I think Oklahoma's going to be just fine. Again, want to see him do it against some tougher opponents coming up in the coming weeks. But, that big home game against Tennessee to open SEC play is looming large. You want to continue to improve in all facets, but the defense looked really good. We know Danny Stutzman, those guys are going to be awesome all year long. So good win for Oklahoma. The 2 Thursday night games, look, we're far removed from them, but it's worth a mention. Mizzou beat Murray State 51-0. Arkansas beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 70-0. Everything you want to see from Missouri. The running backs starting to emerge. Marcus Carroll, those guys look pretty damn solid. Obviously, Cook looked pretty good at quarterback. Luther Burden, they tried to get him the ball as much as they could. I get it, you're playing an inferior opponent, but I think Luther Burden's going to be awesome. And then, of course, Arkansas. Another one that take a smile if you're an Arkansas fan today. I get it. It's been a rough go the last couple of years. The Sam Pittman era has not turned out to be great, but to beat a team 70-0 with Bobby Petrino back calling plays, the Boise State transfer Taylon Green, friend of the show, looked great. Jaquindon Jackson, the running back transfer from Utah, looked great. So great start for Arkansas. We'll see if they can sustain in the coming weeks, but nice start for Mizzou and Arkansas. And then the last thing we got to touch on, man. I couldn't put him in the loser category, but I also couldn't put him in the impressed category. We're just putting him in the what the hell was that category. It's Shane Beamer and the South Carolina Gamecocks. They beat Old Dominion 23-19. I had this one pulled up on my tablet. I'm like, this is a game I didn't think I needed to watch, but I got to watch what the hell's going on here. Offense, just not great. Lenore Sellers, I had high hopes for him. Ugly win, but they got to figure out what's going on offense. Lenore Sellers, 114 yards passing, that's it. 68 yards rushing, that's good. Rocket Sanders had some nice runs for South Carolina, 88 yards rushing and a touchdown on the day. Good to see him back fully healthy. I think that's a great storyline in and of itself. But ugly win, South Carolina. You got to clean up that defense, get some more pressure, force some sacks, force some interceptions. You give 300 yards to Old Dominion, and now you got to go play Kentucky, who's feeling pretty good about themselves with Brock Vandagriff and those big receivers. So, again, you take the win for South Carolina, 1-0, but gosh, that was ugly against Old Dominion. All right, that is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. My thanks to all of you guys for making us your first listen every day. Now you can make your second listen. You can check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, talking all the big storylines around college football. We're talking just SEC here. Spencer's talking all things college football, so you can make that your second listen. And, of course, any of our great SEC shows that are out there. Of course, Matt Moscona does a great job with Locked On LSU, telling me very bluntly that was not pretty what he saw out here in Las Vegas. But all of our other guys do a great job. John Neighbors with Locked On Razorbacks and Zach Blackerby Locked On Auburn. So whatever your favorite SEC team is, make sure you subscribe and listen to us every day and check us out. But also check out your favorite SEC team, Locked On, whatever the school is, and you're going to find that podcast out there. I'm Chris Gordy, signing off from Las Vegas. And, man, what a week one it was for the SEC in college football. We will talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC.